Hi, everyone. Welcome. For those of you joining us again for another Decode session, welcome. And if you're new, welcome as well. So my name is Kishali Ganatalaka, and I'm the head of partnerships and community at Bob AI, which is part of Artesian. So today's event, as I mentioned, is delivered as part of the Artesian Decode project, which is supported by LaunchVic. So before we do begin, I would like to acknowledge traditional owners of the lands on which this event takes place from, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, as well as traditional owners right across our country. I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and I extend this acknowledgement and respect to the elders from other nations on whose land we meet, wherever we are calling them from today. Now, today we have the wonderful Max Mito, who is joining us today. So Max is a serial entrepreneur who founded his first company at the age of 16 and then found a strong room at the age of 19. So if you're unfamiliar with Strong Room and what they do, is offer a secure digital gateway where specialized treatment plans for patients can be quickly and safely accessed with the aim of reducing adverse drug events. So they're currently in more than 600 pharmacies around Australia and very soon expanding into the hospital and aged care space. And as Max mentioned to me just previously, they're doing a soft launch to the hospital space tomorrow. So that's very exciting. So welcome, Max. It's really, really great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me, Cash. Yeah, lovely to see you, and thanks for having me.
No worries. So what we'll do is, Max, we'll just kick off the session with hearing a bit from you, hearing about your journey and your experiences. And then what we'll do is open it up to the audience to ask questions and, have you answer a few of those questions that come through.
Sure. As you can hear from my accent, Cash, grown up internationally, half English, half Japanese. Grew up a lot of my time actually in Hong Kong. Funnily enough, since we're now in this pandemic, my first real desire to enter into healthcare was when we were in Hong Kong and SARS occurred. And I remember it was quite a scary time. We had quite a few ER doctors in our building. And, my family for a very short time actually went back to the UK during that period. And obviously that memory stuck to me quite significantly. So again, it's funny we're in this situation right now. Always growing up, as I said, internationally, saw my parents having to try collate, my sister, my vaccination records, amongst other things, as we moved. And so always felt like there was something to do within healthcare. As Cash mentioned earlier, started my first business when I was 16. It actually was nothing to do within IT. It started off actually as a bagel catering company while at school, which was a bit random, but quickly grew into a couple of cafes. So one in Osaka in Japan, and then the other one in Tokyo. But ultimately, it just wasn't what I was looking to do. So moved on from that job, and essentially came over to Melbourne and had the idea for Strong Room and decided to give it a shot. So so with my journey with Strong Room, it's been quite an interesting one. I started it with a childhood friend of mine, Chris Dure. Came about just from going through, we were actually bartending at a family and friends' 55th. Where we thought that initially facial recognition was a very interesting technology with the ability to match people with their medication records, and we thought that as part of it we could build out a practice management solution. So that was really the initial iteration of Strong Room. So we spent about a year and a half working on that a little bit, but quickly found that particularly controlled drugs, were in many ways just really needed to be attended to for whatever reason. So we set up this trial across Geelong, actually over here in Victoria, with these different pharmacies, set it up, and pretty quickly we saw the state in which controlled drugs are managed, looked into a little bit more into that. And so then we found that actually this was a much bigger problem than what we were initially working on. And so that really became the start for Strongroom. So yeah. Now with Strongroom, it's actually been a really interesting journey. I've been working on it, as Cash mentioned, since I was pretty much 19 years old with Chris, as well as my other co-founder, Kieran. We actually initially started off working off in this garage at a family and friends' place. Pretty soon, and it was quite a tough time because it was quite cold and dingy. Chris and I were working part-time jobs in order for us to be able to afford Kieran at the time, who was actually our first employee and was later on recognized as a co-founder. And so, yeah, I remember that actually one of the jobs I had working to make sure that we could afford the various staffs was becoming a door-to-door salesperson for solar panels, and later on did a bit of the business-to-business side of things. That was actually a really good experience in terms of learning to understand people, because you obviously meet a very wide variety of people in regards to obviously doing door-to-door. But you also got to understand what was happening and to see how it really became, to just understand how important it is to do these face-to-face sales. And nowadays you have a lot more digital marketing to get inbound leads, but for me this was quite a critical experience later on. As I mentioned earlier, we sort of pivoted into what Strongroom became, and we actually launched our first product in 2019 for our opioid replacement therapy software. For those who don't know what opioid replacement therapy is, it's essentially for people that are either coming off pain medication that have opioids, so things like oxycodone, morphine is a pretty well-known one, but also for people that are trying to get off heroin. So it's a highly regulated program. It requires a lot of oversight, both by pharmacists within the community pharmacy setting, as well as various clinics. And this was actually a really great initial use case for us for a number of reasons. One, we didn't know it at the time. Well, we sort of did, but we were tackling probably the most regulated and controlled program that is available. Second, you're dealing with all sorts of regulations as well. So us going from opioid replacement therapy into other workflows after that, and different types of what's known within the pharmacy world as professional services. Essentially from going from there over to other professional services, it became a lot simpler than that. And then we also saw a really great use case initially for our facial recognition technology to work. And so it became a really good entry point. So within our first year, we got about 50 facilities on board. From that point, we released our full community pharmacy program, because we realized there was a lot more workflows, a bigger issue to really be tackling. So we went into our full community pharmacy platform. And as Cash mentioned earlier, now we're just launching into aged care and hospitals. But during that time, we've learned a lot. We've been in development during that period as well, and it's been really great. With also last year, of course, we were fortunate enough to have been selected as part of a BIRD program, and that's where we've really seen a lot of success and growth just by making sure we've got the right structure behind us. And so, yeah, that's been the very basic journey of how Strongroom came about. There is also some exciting elements about Strongroom and the journey and how it's evolved really from that period initially over to this period. We've never really let go of our initial vision of creating a more integrated healthcare system, a more universal healthcare system. And so, for us, again, the facial recognition aspect we believe still plays a very critical part of our success in the future. But one thing that we have found was that the medical system wasn't quite ready for us to be a part of that yet. And so that's where we've really classified our two generations of products. Our generation one is really what's currently out within community pharmacy and soon to be in HN hospitals. But we're working on some things that I'm not exactly allowed to talk about, but will be coming up in the next couple of years or so. But we find that side to be really exciting, and we find AI still has, it's really the dawn of a very new, exciting era in healthcare, and we're really excited to be part of that within the Australian healthcare system, and hopefully soon to be international as well. So that's a very brief background of Strongroom and a little bit on my journey as well. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Max. It was really great to hear about that. So what we'll do is we'll open it up to the audience. Ask any questions that you have for Max. He can answer any of the questions that you throw his way. And yeah, feel free to add them into the chat box. So there's also a Q&A part as well where you can add it there too, and we'll go through each of them. Awesome. All right, so I think we've got our first question. So Max, how did you find fundraising at the early stage? Did you come across any hurdles?
Yeah, so of course we had a few hurdles. So in terms of our fundraising journey, we started off with a family and friends round. That really came from us negotiating our first a worldwide exclusive agreement for a key piece of tech. So at that point, we needed to raise $100,000, and we did it through family and friends. But initially, we approached one VC who laughed us out the room and said that we couldn't. What we were doing was essentially sort of idiotic. So that was actually really important feedback, but again, didn't get quite the same traction as we do have right now. So we went to family and friends. And then really raising our seed round. So, we were able to do so early this year. And essentially that aspect of it really was 12 months in the making, because, we were ready to do it at the beginning of 2020. And as we all know, again, COVID happened. So it wasn't a great environment in order to raise funds. So yeah, that's been really, really difficult, but we've soon got quite exciting news about a new round that's pretty much been finalized as we speak. And that took us 2 to 3 weeks to get through. So, but yeah, we it was a very difficult time initially. And I think a lot of it was due to how difficult our concept was to initially grasp, unless if you're actually in the industry. But, and once, the patient investors that took time to actually understand what we were doing quickly found that what we're doing is actually really necessary within the healthcare system. And it always surprises them, and it surprises me how basic some elements of it still is. Of course, there's huge advancements in it in some areas, some others not so much. So, to communicate that and find that messaging was initially quite a big challenge.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great to see how far you've come, having gone through all of that as well. So well done to you and your team. Another question that's come through, what do you look for in hiring employees?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question. So really with hiring employees, the number one thing is culture, and we've identified that as being creative in terms of addressing various problems, because problems always do come up. Obviously, being tenacious enough to be sticking with those problems and just not giving up the first go. The third one is, of course, integrity. We want to make sure that people are building the best things, that they're being transparent about what we're doing. And Strongroom itself, from our perspective, we share what's happening in terms of numbers to our employees, where we are at, and in turn, we ask the same respect to be given to everybody else in the company. And last one is really self-initiative. So, we love people that are, might be looking at a process within the company that we've built, but also recognize that, there's better ways of doing it. And we're very open in terms of that, as long as it's well thought out. So, culture fit is really important for us in regards to employees. Qualification, not so much. There's actually quite a funny story about our support manager, Hamish. I actually found Hamish as an example while he was a pharmacy delivery boy at one of the first pharmacies we ever deployed. And I remember he came up when we were just putting that through, and he built his own program around managing deliveries, and we thought that was really cool. So I told him to give me a call when he's ready to get an internship, and he did.
Amazing.
And then, so really you can come from anywhere. We don't, I don't, I haven't really come from any impressive background myself, but we look at those diamonds in the rough really, and we like to give people an opportunity. So so cultural fit is really important to us, and of course with some things within the within the company, obviously you can't be an engineer without having go through the basic qualifications, but as long as you can meet that and demonstrate that passion, then that's what we really like to see.
Yeah, I think hiring is very important, especially as you're scaling up as well. There are so many things that you need to think about with regards to hiring. There's another question actually quite similar to hiring. So, did you come across any hiring challenges? Could you share some of your experience or tips that you do have?
Yeah. So for us, we use a very specialized tech stack that unfortunately has been characterized as like the old white man of code, which is C++. So for us, to find the equivalent developer when we initially started, the salary was, salaries for that position is about 150, and obviously we couldn't afford that at the time. We picked that language because of our AI engine, and it just works best with it. But essentially what that meant was that we had to train people ourselves. So again, going back to our story with Hamish, we would really go through the university channels and really find those diamonds in the rough, people that can learn very quickly. And we really look to replicate that. So with us, we're looking at quite a big ramp up in terms of every department really at Strongroom at the moment. So, it's funny, I see my job now becoming more of an HR manager over the next 12 months. That's what it's really turned to. But, we really want to be finding people and always cultivating a talent pool. So I occasionally reach out to people with interesting backgrounds and resumes and just wanting to have a chat with them, or I'm always open to have a chat vice versa. And, many times people won't immediately be a fit, but I'll see that, a position might come up that they're perfect for in 6 to 8 months time. And I think that's how you get really great people on the team as well.
I like that last point because, yeah, sometimes you're not necessarily going to find that right person when you do search for them. So it's good to have those interactions early on, because then later on you can find them. And yeah, you've already had that discussion with them. So here's another question. So what systems do you use in order to stay in sync and scale from founders through to having many employees?
This is my economics background really coming through, but really we're looking, I like to do something called supply-led growth, but it's sort of a silly term, but essentially when we were just founders, I quickly identified, for example, that there are probably better developers and it takes some time to do it. That's where the part-time jobs came through. So really for us, we try to put in as many people on to anticipate the growth. So going through that transition at times has been quite painful. Obviously, raising capital allows for you to have that breathing space to make sure that you have those right hires, and in turn, that fuels growth. So really, for me, my belief is finding good people early on, and in turn, they build a great product, a great company, and then that in turn means happy customers and then revenue growth as well. So Yeah, yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Um, Question: what have you found as the key things which is helping you to raise rounds?
So obviously the growth rate's been quite impressive, and yeah, so obviously that's the KPIs. Hitting KPIs is really really important as part of it. Also, going back to people, we've always invested heavily in tech, and although it took us maybe an additional 1 to 2 years than if we deployed a sales force in terms of that budget allocation, um, that's fueled growth again. So really, when people look at us, we've been able to penetrate a difficult market. We're building up, significant moats over the next 12 to 24 months. And so investors can really buy into that narrative and understand what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
Uh, yeah.
Just going through the questions. All right, another one. I think you may have mentioned this kind of before. What's something you wish you had known earlier?
I think really, like on a more personal level, it's really about the sacrifice that it's taken to build up this company. I've really, yeah, it's been incredibly difficult at times. On my end, when we started this, I had a lot of friends going through 21sts, and so there's a lot of sacrifices that really needed to be done early on in order to make this happen. So, I wish I knew how difficult it was, but also on the other hand, knowing how to work smarter as well. But ultimately, obviously, everything's been worth it, and things are looking very good at the moment. But the difficulty part was one aspect I wish I knew, and the other part is really, I guess any entrepreneur going up sort of idolizes Elon Musk and putting in the Elon Musk hours as well. And I think one thing I'm still learning at the moment is finding that work-life balance. And I think, for me as well, it's really important to take at least one day off each week now, while before I'd be, putting in 100 hours per week. So I think just making sure that you have that balance, that time to also think about your business and working on top of it is incredibly important. So yeah, that was just one thing I wish yeah, I knew a little bit more about when starting, but no regrets about any of that.
Yeah, I think we all can understand that working in a startup, there's so much to work on. There's and very little resources when you really do start up the beginning. So yeah, full credits to you and the team for doing all of what you've done right now, and you're doing amazing. So well done for that.
Thanks.
Um, Another question that's come through. How have you found the reaction of customers and investors in having a young team? Do you see it as a blocker to your growth, or has it been helpful?
No, so it's been fantastic. I think that people have been really supportive because we're young and they've been willing to give us a chance. And, in many ways, if we were maybe a 30, 40 year old, if I was 30 or 40 years old going into the industry, I would have probably been, dealt with a bit more harshly, for lack of a better word. We'll put on a higher standard. But I think when people saw us, I remember my pitch used to be, I'm from the University of Melbourne. I'm trying to get this thing off the ground. And, they wanted to give us a chance to see what we could do. And so people were a lot more forgiving as a result of that. And that, again, gave us room to learn. Now, I think with tech just moving so quickly as well, having a young team, um, people that had been around computers since they've been like 11 years old, like our CTO, Kieran, that's not really been a big detriment to the team. And in fact, it's given quite a young energy to what we're doing. And I think also for us, we've been a little bit naive going into the medical industry of not understanding how certain things work. But in some ways, that's actually been quite good because even though we make those mistakes, we still make that progress. and we take chances that others might not take in that regards, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't as well. So and I think another part of it as well is really our brand is very young, it's very fresh for something that's traditionally been seen within medical technology as something that's been quite dry, and our user interface reflects that. And I think one of the things that people really looked at when they looked at our software is just how nicely designed it is. It's not this entirely blue screen with just script, with text just running all across it. So looking at something that's a little bit more funky, but also that makes sense with the way that we're all interacting with technology these days. That side, I think, has been a bit of an advantage over some of the incumbents that we're dealing with at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's very important to ensure that there's a good user interface, but also that you're marketing it to the right market and it's very understandable to everyone that is actually reading and working on it.
Yeah.
That's definitely something that's going to put you apart from everyone else.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, just lastly on that, actually, just one of the things we found really interesting was to not use icons, because essentially we try use as least amount of icons as possible. And really, it's because what we found was that having those icons is from the from the digital age. So if you're looking at settings, for example, if you're you might not necessarily associate that image with the settings page as an example, or to different things within the application. And so what we've really done is try to focus on text as much as possible. But now, as people are getting used to using iPhones and, emails, there's more and more icons that are there to make sure that you're using more efficient space. So we started to introduce it, but we're still quite wary of it. And again, it's all part of knowing who you're designing for as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really interesting point with the icons. Um, Another one that's come through, I've heard the fundraising process is a full-time job. Do you have a specific process for going out to investors?
I do, and I wish again, going back to your last question, Cash, about what did I wish I knew. Yeah, fundraising is definitely a full-time job. The way I compensated for it wasn't good. It was essentially working 40 hours on the business, 9 to 5, then 40 hours with the investment. So it is a full-time job. What I wish I knew was to put it through deadlines. And this is something I'm still whatever through now. Like sometimes I want specific investors on my cap table. And so, you think about various things, but really what I wish I knew was, just, I think fundraising is essentially like any other sales process, except for rather than selling your product, you're selling yourself and you're selling your company. So really just organizing as many meetings, putting yourself out there, understand that you're going to get rejected a lot, but also really target the right investors. And, Boab has been amazing, where, they can, they've been supporting you or supporting me along the way, supporting Strongroom. But, some other investors have also been very supportive. And that's, again, really helped us with the next round. So, I think for first-time founders especially, that full-time job is sort of inevitable, unless if you've got a great product. And I'm really jealous of those people. But after that initial round, I think then raising your subsequent rounds after that, if you've got good partners, becomes a lot easier. So that's something that I must say we did a good job on for our seed round, despite having a pretty big cap table.
That's great. And yeah, you're doing a very great job, so don't worry.
Yeah.
What sort of development process does your team use? Interested in how you've scaled the programming process as you've grown employees.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. Quality assurance has been one of the biggest things that plagues Chris's life, my co-founder and Kieran's. My most painful memory was just last year when we put out an update. It was super buggy. We lost we didn't lose 8 customers, but there was 8 customers on trial. They all decided not to go ahead when it was a pretty sure thing. So like essentially we lost about $10,000, $12,000 in one day, and that was a pretty hefty mistake. Initially, we were just developing to fix bugs. So we'd fix something. There's a pretty notorious story in Strongham actually of me getting about $2,000 worth of speeding fines because I'd wake up each morning, get these calls for all these different bug issues. I'll drive down to the pharmacy, and incidentally, right outside my house is a speeding camera. So it would get me each time. But yeah, essentially what happened was, yeah, we went from fixing bugs and really trying to develop rapidly to now having a more structured approach. And so, um, and also with growing the team, it's really important to have good documentation. We've also have been having a lot more meetings lately, which is something that's been kind of painful, but been a necessary evil. So yeah, the structure right now, just for those who are interested, is we do have a daily stand-up meeting. The other teams as well, depending upon what needs to be done, have an individual 15 to an hour long meeting each day, depending on what needs to get done again. They also, during that time, consult our medical advisory board for any sort of design changes. And then at that point, we've of course run sprints for 2 weeks. But what's also been really interesting is as our team has grown from just, Kieran and Chris doing a lot of the development work to a bigger team, is that you can now space out the way that development is done to be more efficient. And what we mean by that is managing customers' expectations. So if we've got two teams of developers running at the same time, one might be working on a longer system change, while some others will be working on feature changes or small UI UX changes. That's worked really well for us, where from our customers' point of view, it looks like we're pushing out huge updates each month, but on the back end side, and we ensure that our developers have the right amount of time to develop high quality products, and also have time to actually test out everything to make sure it's happened. There's a few other things, and I could go on and on about it, but that's essentially the process that we've got, and it's working pretty well for us. But obviously, we're about to invest in more tools as the team gets bigger to automate a lot of the testing, etc. as well.
Yeah, that's good to know. Another one, do you have any recommendations on how to connect with key opinion leaders?
Um, yeah, I do, and I've actually, I was recently a mentor for the Swinburne Accelerator program. I told them the same thing. When you're starting off, people love to help innovative companies with a good idea, and so one thing that I really think I would do next time if I were to start a new, um, technology company is to really identify those key opinion leaders pretty early on, either by reading journal articles or whatever else it might be. Especially in medicine, it's very relevant to find those really good researchers. And then I would reach out for a conversation with them about your idea and actually invite them onto your advisory board. And don't be stingy about equity as well. We gave about 0.5% for each advisor when they initially came on board. Of course, right now it's a little bit different because we're a bit more on our way, but that equity made sure that they were also very generous with their time, but it also didn't feel like you were taking advantage of their kindness as well. So yeah, people love to help, and obviously they really want to. And the worst that will happen is they'll give you feedback about the product that you can use for your next conversation and to refine your idea as well, which is really important.
Yeah, I think key opinion leaders are really great to have, especially when it comes to fundraising. It's good to show that you've got those experts on board that can actually say what you're doing is you're on the right track. So I think that's really good.
Yeah.
You've mentioned before that you mostly do HR activities now and fundraising, of course. Do you still get time to work on the product?
Not so much, and I'm fortunate enough to have really good people on board. It's kind of hilarious because we've got a new product designer 5 months ago, and she designs certain elements out, and I get a bit nostalgic because what I did design initially, actually, one thing that I was quite proud of was I did our first version, even though it wasn't very good. I designed a lot of it, but now it's all being phased out. And so obviously with the feedback from customers, I relay that onto the development team, but we've got enough people in there that are much better than what I do with a product. But in terms of product strategy, so understanding a solution to a problem, that's where I play a bit of a bigger role as well. So going into aged care hospitals, whatever those verticals are, we look through, I look at what the critical problems are, put through a solution, speak to the executive team, and then allocate resources accordingly to it. So that's still a pretty big part of my job. Another part is still closing, big deals, fundraising, HR. So still doing a lot of it, but I think more time is spent towards HR and, a little bit on the product solution as well.
Interesting. Okay, we've got another one that has come through. How do you manage meetings? Do you have many meetings with different members within the team, or do you have one meeting with each of the team as a group? How do you manage your meetings?
We're pretty anti meetings at Strong Room, to be honest. We try to keep away from them as much as possible, but now we look to align ourselves. So I probably have a weekly meeting with the ones that are relevant to me. So obviously that's a sales team, executive team, and then operations team. So that's, once a week. Generally they go on for about 30 minutes each. And then we've got the daily stand-up meeting, which takes 15 to 45. And then you have natural people that I probably speak to about 2 or 3 different people every day, pretty much constantly. But aside from that, we let people get on with their jobs. And so, I think that, again, actually one thing that's been interesting as well is recently I've become quite obsessed with organizational charts, as Cash, a little bit. And what we found was that by having a really well-structured organizational chart early on, it actually reduces time for necessary parts for meetings, because people realize they're not supposed to be part of whatever meetings. And initially with the startup, it's very broad. People do a bit of everything. But now we're at that time where, you just need to get on, do your job, do it well. So that organizational chart really helps people to know where they belong in the organization, but also what opportunities are coming up as well. So yeah.
Amazing. That's good to know. I think that's going to be very helpful for those that are startups and scaling up as well. So I think that's all the questions that we have. I think we might wrap it up. Really appreciate your time, Max. Really appreciate everyone that has joined us as well. Is there a way that anyone that would like to connect with you, would it be LinkedIn, or is there some other way that they can connect with you?
Definitely just leave me a message on LinkedIn, and would be happy to connect. Otherwise, I'm happy for people to reach out to me via my email address. So will we be able to send that out?
We can include that.
So great. So feel free to reach out. Always happy to give advice and answer any questions as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Amazing. Thank you so much, Max. Thank you everyone for joining us. We do have another decode session tomorrow, which is on valuation. So if you'd like to join that one, please feel free to register for it. Really appreciate it. Have a lovely evening, and we'll see you all soon.
See you guys.
Thanks, Max.